Hello and welcome back to Reason News. New Russiagate evidence has emerged that, according to Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, directly implicates former President Barack Obama. Gabbard has referred the case to the Department of Justice, which will determine the criminal implications. Late Wednesday night, Tulsi Gabbard made public a series of declassified documents she claims constitute irrefutable evidence of wrongdoing by then-President Barack Obama and several of his top administration officials in the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation. The Justice Department, upon receipt of these referrals, has confirmed it will assess whether any laws were broken and whether prosecution is warranted. The so-called Russiagate controversy refers to allegations that Russian operatives interfered in the 2016 US presidential election to aid Donald Trump's campaign and that Trump's campaign colluded with Russia. The ensuing investigation, known as Russiagate, fueled years of scrutiny, legislative hearings, and partisan conflict. Key past conclusions include US intelligence agencies in a 2017 assessment stated that Russia intervened to help Trump. Multiple inquiries, including those by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, found evidence of Russian interference but did not charge Trump officials with conspiracy with Moscow. And Trump and his allies have consistently claimed that the investigation was politically motivated and based on faulty or fabricated intelligence. The documents released by Gabbard dating back to 2016 include excerpts from intelligence community communications and internal assessments. Key allegations made by Gabbard and her allies are that intelligence assessments tying Russia to US election interference were, according to the documents, based on a single vague, unclear, and unverifiable snippet from one of the inferior reports. Senior Obama administration officials, including former DNI James Clapper, CIA Director John Brennan, and FBI Director James Comey, are allegedly named as having participated in a process driven by political motives rather than analytical standards. And the documents assert that former President Obama orchestrated the development of an assessment they knew to be false, aiming to implicate the Trump campaign in Russian collusion. Gabbard accuses this group of engaging in a long-term coup conspiracy against the American populace. Here's a video from Fox News.
Today we've released a declassified oversight majority staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice. The records that we released on Friday that were ODNI records, Senator Chuck Grassley's release on Monday of what is known as the Clinton Annex, which was an appendix to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General's 2018 report, as well as the House Intelligence Committee's majority oversight report that we're releasing today, all come back to and confirm the same report. There was a gross politicization and manipulation of intelligence by the Obama administration intended to delegitimize President Trump even before he was inaugurated, ultimately usurping the will of the American people. I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence Report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts, like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous.
A criminal referral is a request to the Department of Justice to investigate and potentially prosecute based on evidence of criminal conduct. Such a referral does not guarantee charges will be filed. The DOJ has the authority to independently assess whether adequate grounds exist for criminal action. In this case, the DOJ declined to comment on whether an investigation had been formally launched, but Attorney General Pam Bondi said the Bureau will review all referred material thoroughly before making any prosecutorial decision. A spokesperson for Barack Obama called the allegations absurd and a feeble attempt to distract from more urgent national matters. Former intelligence chiefs James Clapper, John Brennan, and James Comey have not issued public statements at this hour, but have previously defended both the process and findings of the 2017 intelligence assessment. Democratic lawmakers say the White House's moves are aimed at shifting attention away from unrelated controversies, arguing that the declassified report contains little that contradicts the prevailing intelligence view that Russia sought to aid Trump in 2016. The DOJ faces intense political and public scrutiny in deciding whether to proceed with criminal investigations. Now, legal analysts caution that while the documents may support political arguments, proving criminal behavior by a sitting or former president, especially over complex intelligence assessments, remains an enormous hurdle. The DOJ's task force is expected to spend weeks reviewing the declassified materials. Any decisions about the indictments or further investigative action could set major legal precedents and define institutional boundaries between the executive branch branch and the intelligence community. On Capitol Hill, party lines are hardening, with Republican lawmakers that have rallied around Gabbard insisting on full transparency and demanding that the DOJ hold every person accountable, no matter how powerful. And Democrats counter that the declassification and referral process itself is being politically weaponized and is unsupported by the broader record of intelligence community findings. Public reaction remains highly polarized, with many Americans divided along partisan lines as to whether these revelations represent deep-seated corruption or a politically motivated witch hunt. The potential criminal investigation into a former president is unprecedented in modern US history, and the implications could stretch far beyond 2025, where intensified distrust between the intelligence agencies and the White House. Questions over how intelligence assessments are made and communicated to policymakers, and renewed scrutiny of executive overreach and accountability at the highest levels of government. Legal analysts and historians alike caution that these proceedings, whatever their outcome, could set momentous precedents, impacting the foundational doctrines of American governance. Global allies and rivals are watching closely. The possibility of criminal proceedings against a former US president for alleged abuses of intelligence processes may erode confidence in US political stability and intelligence integrity. Russian and Chinese state media have already begun emphasizing the story, framing it as evidence of Western democratic crisis. In the coming days and weeks, the DOJ will determine whether to launch full criminal investigations. Congressional committees are expected to hold additional hearings, and further document releases may follow. Legal analysts agree that whatever the ultimate outcome, the new Russiagate evidence and accompanying criminal referral will shape not only the remainder of the Trump administration, but also the future of intelligence oversight, separation of powers, and public trust in American democracy. As America grapples with this latest chapter in the long-running Russiagate saga, one thing is certain: the intersection of intelligence politics and justice remains as contentious as ever. We will continue to monitor developments and provide updates as soon as they become available. Until next time, stay informed, stay updated, and stay curious.